we have time for too many introductions. So Terence, you want to start off?
Thank you, Mate.
Yep.
Q2 and good evening, everyone. Welcome to MSBS Weekly Meditation by Phra Goh. Today is 6th of July 2021, and we are very grateful to have with us Bhante Adhibalo, popularly known as Phra Goh. Bhante's birthday is next week. Bhante had his Bhikkhu ordination into the Theravada tradition of Thai Dhamma sect at Satipatthana Monastery in Johor, Malaysia in 2008, and spent a 5-spring retreat at various forest monasteries in Malaysia and Thailand. Bhante is currently the religious advisor to Buddhist Youth Network Singapore and has conducted MSBS Weekly Tuesday Guided Meditation since 2020. This week we are continuing last week's talk on the 5 qualities conducive for enlightenment. Bhante will be leading the homage to the Buddha and taking of 5 precepts for Buddhists. Now let's compose our minds, put our palms together, and welcome Bhante. Welcome. Over to you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you, Terence. So we shall begin with the opening chant. Yeah, the homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. And the 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Suramiraya majappamadadhana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and tonight we are still continuing this series on the 5 qualities that is pertinent through several sets of other qualities. So these are the common threads. So basically, they are the 5 spiritual faculties, and we're going to show the table to sort of give a quick summary of what we've gone through. So the past few weeks, we've already covered faith, energy, and mindfulness. So these are the 3 of the 5 qualities we've gone through. So you can look at the left column. So total there are 5. So today we are talking about concentration. And if you look at the chart here, you can see there's few of these 7 sets of qualities that has samadhi, or this thing called concentration. right? So if you look at this, the last two columns, right, the 7 Bojjhanga factors, or the 7 factors of enlightenment. There's this samadhi, one of the 5 qualities, and also the Noble Eightfold Path also has samadhi, but there's an additional word in front called samma samadhi, or this right concentration. So there's a difference. I think we've covered that in the previous series. The 7 Bojjhanga factors, or the 7 factors of enlightenment, you can find it actually in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is in the 4 frames of reference in the case of this translation. So it's part of this mindfulness of the Dhamma, mindfulness of phenomenon. So there are several things, 5 hindrances, 5 aggregates, 6 sense bases, and one of them is the 7 factors of enlightenment. So basically, the 7 factors of enlightenment through this samadhi, through wisdom, through contemplation of impermanence, one can actually trigger these 7 Bojjhanga factors, 7 factors of enlightenment. So again, we are going to go through in theory. The first factor is mindfulness, or basically right mindfulness. So this is the first factor. And the second factor is this thing called energy. Right, so it's mentioned here as virya, also covered in these 5 qualities, mindfulness, energy. And the third factor is investigation of the Dhamma. Second factor is investigation of Dhamma. The third factor then is energy. And the fourth factor is actually the symptom or the sign that you're on the right track. That means it's more like the product of a cause. So the cause is you apply this right mindfulness and investigate impermanence. So this is the foundation, and you need energy to sustain. It's not just you think once only. Yeah. So sometimes you attend lectures and talks, and we think, okay, everything is impermanent. Yeah, true. I agree with that. But there's no sustenance. You don't carry on thinking that again and again. So you just probably think for a few seconds and that's it. So this energy or effort requires one to keep generating this contemplation again and again every second. So this is called right effort. So when the conditions are right, when the first 3 factors are there, then it will trigger this thing called the fourth factor of these 7 factors is this joy, Dhamma joy. There's this spiritual kind of rapture or joy that arises naturally once the first 3 conditions are fulfilled. So that doesn't mean once a person has joy and that's it, they can stay with the joy and enjoy. So this is the common mistake for most meditators. Oh, they feel so nice and they think, okay, that's it. That's the end goal. It's so nice, and you just stay with this joy or happiness. So that's not the way to practice. So the foundation, a person still need to maintain this impermanence, mindful of impermanence all the time, regardless of whatever one experiences. So it can be mindfulness of this changing emotion, mindfulness of your meditation object. So whatever it is, you need to be mindful of impermanence, not to cling on to any of the phenomena. So if a person has joy, they also can cling on to the joy. They create desire, and the joy will disappear and go back to square one. So this is like a roller coaster. Person improves and then they backslide because of clinging. Okay, so and that is the fourth factor. It's a sign that you've done the first 3 correctly. And if a person persists, on this mindfulness of impermanence, they will evolve past this Dhamma joy and go into this state of tranquility. That means the joy will disappear and things will be very calm and peaceful. So this is the 5th factor, tranquility. And beyond tranquility, the mind will unify and develop samadhi. So this samadhi is vipassana kind of samadhi. So it's concentration through insight. concentration through insight. And that is the sixth factor. And the seventh factor is equanimity. Equanimity, right? So a lot of people think that these seven bojjhanga factors is actually the jhanas. No, yeah. This for the seven factors, the concentration comes first before equanimity. Whereas the jhanic concentration in the Noble Eightfold Path has concentration first before joy and happiness. Whereas these bojjhanga factors has Dhamma joy first before concentration. So it's a different process altogether. Yeah, it's a different kind of concentration. So you can refer to this Samadhi Sutta, the four kinds of Samadhi we explained before. The first kind of Samadhi is the Samma Samadhi, the jhanic kind of Samadhi, to bring contentment of the mind. So we'll explain that later. And the second kind of Samadhi is this development of this divine knowledge, which is the visualization kind of meditations, which is another kind of Samadhi. And the third kind of Samadhi is this Vipassana insight kind of Samadhi. And the fourth kind is the continuation of this Vipassana Samadhi that leads to liberation. So a person with an enlightened mind, clear of defilements, will have another kind of Samadhi. So these are the four kinds of Samadhi mentioned in this Samadhi Sutta. So we've talked about these seven factors. So now we're going to talk about this Samma Samadhi, or this Noble Eightfold Path concentration. So it's actually the jhanic Samadhi. Yeah? So we can differentiate Vipassana Samadhi from jhanic Samadhi. So in the jhanic Samadhi, we shall look at the table again in the next few slides. Yeah, okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today, right? Concentration is often defined as the four jhanas, or the four levels of concentration. So these first four, in this chart, we can see different kind of classifications. So if you look at the first row, there's this thing called the fourfold and the fivefold, right? So in the suttas, it is classified as the fourfold, yeah? First, dash, second, third, and fourth. So this is the original classification. And later along the way, there's a new canon called the Abhidhamma kind of classification, which classified into fivefold, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So out of the sake of simplicity, we are just going to talk about the fourfold. Yeah, we're not going to talk about fivefold. Also, for practical reasons, somehow nobody practices the fivefold. Yeah, and we are going to look at the first row first. There are these Pali terms: Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, Ekagata, and Upekha. So these are called the jhana factors. So these are the factors or things one will encounter when they enter these different levels of concentrations. Right. So what is this Vitakka and Vichara? So the translation over here, Vitakka means application and Vichara means sustainment. So a lot of translators or interpreters will interpret it as a person can investigate with these two states. That means only in the first level of concentration one can investigate. This is their interpretation. And at the second level, you just sustain the thought. And at the third level, there's no more, at the second level, there's no more application and sustainment based on the fourfold classification. Yeah, and at the third level and the fourth level, there's also no application and sustainment of thought. So they are trying to say at the second level onwards, one cannot investigate the Dhamma anymore. That is the scholastic way of interpreting. But if you want to look at the Jhana Suttas, all levels of concentration can be investigated. Yeah, be the first level of concentration, you go second, third, fourth, all the way to the formless levels of concentration. One can investigate on impermanence, suffering, non-self, and the whole list of contemplations. So to say that application, vitaka and vichara is investigation is not correct. So the actual, I use my own terminology, vitaka and vichara are actually cluttering of certain thoughts, cluttering of thoughts that obstruct the clear mind. So in the first level of concentration, there is these other emotions of joy, happiness, and one-pointedness. In the second level of concentration, there is also joy, happiness, and one-pointedness. So the only difference is this vitaka and vichara, application and sustaining of thoughts, sustaining thinking. So how to differentiate, right? So only when a person enter this first and second level of concentrations, then they can see the difference, the clarity of this joy and happiness. So in the first level of concentration, the joy and happiness will be kind of cloudy, as in obstructed. So it's not a very clear or strong kind of joy, happiness emotion. So the emotion is kind of obstructed. Yeah, so you can get maybe half of the kind of sensations. Whereas if a person enter the second level of concentration, one can then experience joy and happiness without these obstructing thoughts. So it's a cluttering of the mind. So, and again, because anybody that, let's say, they enter these levels of concentration, they may not be able to differentiate what is joy and happiness. It comes together. So the only way to differentiate joy and happiness is if they enter the second and the third level of concentration. So both are pleasant emotions. So a person who transits from the second and the third, then this emotion of joy sort of will disappear and left with this thing called happiness. Happiness, right? So then only from then they can differentiate what's the difference between joy and happiness. And to go further, in the fourth level of concentration, then there's a disappearing of happiness and there's only left with this emotion of equanimity. So in the third level, there's also equanimity. Yeah? So there's happiness and equanimity. If you look at the diagram. So the first and second level of concentration doesn't have equanimity. Whereas in the third level of concentration, there's a mixture of equanimity and happiness. Yeah, so you can check the suttas to look at the entire definition. So this table is to make things simple to look at for presentation's sake. But of course, you want to refer to the entire sutta, that's also fine. And we have this thing called one-pointedness, right? So again, one-pointedness is interpreted in different practitioners, different teachers differently. So for our case, the one-pointedness, it can be the physical breath body. So that is one level of one-pointedness. That is just one level of one-pointedness. Then there is another level, right? So if a person were to sort of practice this Anapanasati Sutta to the full extent, here the 16 steps, the last few steps of the Anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing discourse, will mention about Vipassana, mindful of impermanence. So during the phase of detachment, although one's mind is still fixated on the breath or the breath body, it can be anywhere actually. It can be below the nostril, it can be at the abdomen, it can be at your heart base, it can be the whole body. that is just a physical one-pointedness. Then we are talking about another kind of one-pointedness, which is a mental one-pointedness. It is through the observation of impermanence of this breath body that the mind will detach and settle to another interesting, peaceful area called the wisdom kind of one-pointedness, where the mind is more detached and calm and more stable. So we are using that one-pointedness to enter all the levels of concentration. So this will be very consistent with the Dipa Sutta, using concentration of the breath to enter even the formless levels of concentration, right? So if a person is just using a physical breath body, then some people will say, "Oh, formless concentration cannot use form." Then how? Yeah, so some people will have this kind of reasoning. So, but the actual suttas, one-pointedness will be talking about the mental detached one-pointedness, so that even concentration on the breath can lead to formless levels of concentrations. Right. So again, this is my take on the concentrations. But in these Tuesday Zoom sharings, we seldom do these different levels because it requires the breath meditation. Somehow only the breath meditation can systematically enter the first and the second and the third and the fourth levels of concentration. Right? Of course, there's another technique which we use is the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the 4 sublime states. So what we covered in the previous year on the Mettang Sutta, with the M behind the Metta, in the Mettang Sutta, and also with reference to other Metta Suttas, the first level of concentration can be achieved with loving kindness. When you read it in all the directions, a person can reach this first level of concentration. And if they were to practice insight, practice this vipassana, and add it into that practice, it can evolve and skip right into the 4th level of concentration. So it sort of jump from first to the 4th. So this is for the metta, for samatha and vipassana. And second sublime state, which is this compassion, a person just goes to the samatha route, or just wish all beings free from suffering, and they do it repeatedly, they can enter the second level of concentration. Right? So some people believe that, oh, okay, having compassion is a very very painful, very depressing kind of emotion. It's a bit of saddening kind of emotion. But when they practice this jhanic kind of karuna, jhanic kind of compassion, they will feel this joy and happiness. So it's really so weird. How come compassion can be joy? Right? So those who successfully done this compassion with concentration method, they can achieve this joy and happiness. So what we are doing is we are not doing the circular or mundane kind of compassion where we think of a person, or if they're suffering, they are hunger, they're experiencing sickness, we need to have compassion towards them. So that is a very circular, mundane kind of compassion, which is very dissipating of the energy. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Yeah, it's a requirement in our daily life. Operate when we help others, we need to have this function. But too much of it is also no good. That's why some people will have burnout. So we've talked about it last year. There's these extremes. If a person goes all out too much, they'll experience depression and burnout. So the meditation way, what we're doing is recharging this battery of the mind. So instead of dissipating the energy, we keep refreshing the thought. every moment, every sensation, we are generating these thoughts of compassion. Or may all beings be well, free from suffering. May all sensations be free from suffering. So you are actually decluttering the mind every second. Because once you think of a scenario, think of a situation, think of a story of a certain person suffering, then the mind will naturally cling and develop different kinds of craving, and it will sort of dissipate the mind. So when we are recharging this mind, we're sort of slowly cutting off this overthinking, then the mind will actually develop this samadhi, this jhanic kind of samadhi, which is there's joy and happiness in the compassion. And then we later on apply insight, or this vipassana, this wisdom, into this compassion, and we are going to observe impermanence and detachment. And from there, then this second level of concentration from compassion will jump right into the formless level of this infinite space, right, based on this Mettan Sutta. And the next sublime state, interestingly, will be this appreciative joy. So it goes in sequence. So the appreciative joy, the jhanic method, will be the third jhana, and the equanimity will be the fourth jhana. So if a person practices insight together, they'll also experience these 7 factors of enlightenment, and the jhanic samadhi will evolve to their various respective formless concentrations. So in the sublime state of appreciative joy, we go into this infinite consciousness, and equanimity will go into this realm of nothingness. So this is the range of concentrations. So again, these vipassana and samatha, they are not necessarily separate things. Yes, one can practice them separately. Samatha, jhanas is one thing, vipassana is a separate thing. You can practice that. And most of the time, what we do is also in tandem, in unison. So we practice them together. All right, so to illustrate again using the example last year, this Venerable Ananda, the Buddha's attendant, foremost in the memory. So he did a survey amongst all the arhats, all the enlightened disciples of the Buddha. So he asked them, how did you practice and reach enlightenment? And after doing all this survey and interview, he has 4 general answers. So the first group of monks, or the first category, they do the samatha first, that means they do the jhanic route, followed by insight. Then they reach enlightenment. So they do it separately. And the second category of monks, they do the other way around. They do insight first. So they develop wisdom, followed by concentration later. And they got enlightened from there. And the third group, they do it in unison, both concentration and wisdom. And the fourth category is very interesting. The fourth category is having doubt in the Dhamma. So there's certain question, there's certain doubt, and keep asking and asking and asking until the mind is liberated. So it's a bit like the Zen koan style of practice. And yeah, so I stop my theoretical sharing. It's a bit heavy today because all these technicalities can only be experienced in the practical session, right? So I won't hold the crowd further. I'll open the floor to this Q&A. Any questions in the Zoom or on the Facebook comments, do feel free to ask. Yeah, so if someone new, Ken, hi.
Hello, good evening, Bante.
Hi, where are you from?
Where am I from? That's a good question. I'm from Putra Heights Buddhist Society.
Oh, it's from Malaysia.
Yeah. In Subang
Okay.
Jaya, Selangor, Malaysia.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
that's right.
Welcome.
That's right.
Okay. Yes, so we open the floor to questions. Do feel free to ask. If it's too deep or technical, then we can leave it to the apolitical part. Come and see for yourself in the meditation. So I give a count to 3. If there's no questions here or the yes,
Yeah, just now I'm interested in understanding the Metta Sutta that you mentioned.
Yeah.
About the 4th jhana is let's say using the 4 sublime states.
Yeah.
Metta, right? In the 4th jhana. After that, go to the first arupa jhana, which is you're saying change to
compassion.
Compassion.
Yeah.
After that, the second arupa jhana change to upeka.
Appreciative joy.
Yeah. After that, the third arupa jhana change to equanimity.
Yeah.
Equanimity. Does it happen automatically? It means that when you go to the 4th, using metta. After that, when you go to the 5th, the whole state of mind become compassion. Compassion, the content of that state of mind. After that, go to the next one, then become upeka. Is it become automatically the nature of the mind? It's like that?
Depends
we must initiate ourselves to be in that state.
Depends on how you do it. If let's say you've already learned the step-by-step level jhanic method, then a person can just do, let's say from the metta, they can do from 1st to 2nd to 3rd to 4th and higher. Yeah, so that is if a person knows the step-by-step method. But if a person straight away does the all direction method, all directions where all beings be well and happy. Through the samatha method alone, the limit is the first jhana. But if they add the insight part, the 7 bojjhangas factors, then the mind will have both this vipassana and samatha. So the vipassana, they have the 7 bojjhangas, and the samatha that developed after this is the 4th jhana. So similarly, if they do the compassion, right, initially it will be the 2nd jhanas. But if they add the 7 bojjhanga factors, then the jhana will develop straight away into the first arupa jhana.
Okay. I don't know. I never experienced such steady changing the object from metta. After that, change to karuna. Change to because changing that mental state from one type of sublime state from metta, change to karuna. I think it's a very different object. Very different feeling.
Yeah,
very
correct.
different. So how can it be changed like that? I don't know, because this is a bit, I don't know. I never experienced this, but because if you go to arupa jhana, right, normally if this is a space, right, then for me the object will be space. After that, the second arupa will be the consciousness, right? Of the space. That is what it is practiced. What I understand. Yeah, but how does it changing that mental state to one, to one sublime state to another one? That one I don't. I can't.
Yeah, so happen the phenomenon just appears to be like that. So again, during the practical session, if you try to follow the instructions closely, you may experience it.
Okay, let's say in practical state of mind, practically, right? Meaning from the metta, after that you go to the next state, then you actually change the whole. We actually initiate the feeling of compassion that become karuna that will appear, or it just appear automatically when we go to the next state?
Oh, you need to regenerate the intention. So you must tell yourself, now I'm switching to this compassion mode. After you finish the compassion part, then you're switching to the appreciative joy. Yeah?
But that will be a very different, very drastic change, I think, from metta to karuna, right? It's a different sense, different, very drastic. But how can that be by the let's say, commanding the mind? Okay, I want to change to that state, then it happens just like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So no worries. Later we'll go through the wishing part. So like when we wish all beings well happy, there's a certain emotion, and when we wish all beings may they be free from suffering, then there is a different emotion again.
Okay, Bhante.
Yeah. Okay. Ken, you have something on?
Yes, Bhante.
Yeah.
Right. When it comes to the topic of jhana and vipassana, it appears that this topic is a matter of huge debate and dispute, at least in the modern meditation circles and modern Buddhist discussion. So there are many questions I have, but I don't want to take up too much time. I'll just ask one question pertaining to the talk just now, regarding one-pointedness and vitakka and vichara. So Bhante, you mentioned about how you understand or how you define vitakka and vichara as a cluttering of thoughts, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering how could those mental states coexist with one-pointedness? Or maybe I'm not understanding ekaggata well enough. Like how does one-pointedness exist together with vitakka and vichara if they mean a cluttering of thoughts? So what could they mean in the context of one-pointedness, in the context of the first and second jhana? Yeah, so that's my question. I hope it's not too big of a question.
Yeah, no problem. So the one-pointedness of the mind, at least through the vipassana standpoint, if a person were to practice the whole 16 steps of Anapanasati, you can compare it with the Anapanasati Sutta and the Dipa Sutta, the IPA. So a person without jhanas can achieve one-pointedness. That means just by observing impermanence alone, through the detachment of the mind settling can reach this one-pointedness. So even when the mind is scattered all over the place, without any unification, without any jhanas, can have one-pointedness. So the one step higher above that, which is the first jhana, will be a small transition. So there is still some cluttering of thoughts, but there's some symptoms of this joy and happiness. And it's a slow filtration process. So then, of course, the second level will be a bit higher. It's a better kind of filtration without these obstructing thoughts that cloud this emotion. And then the third level, something better, different levels of filter here.
Okay, right, Bhante. So a follow-up question would be, what does one-pointedness mean? Like, what does ekaggata mean in that context? So you said contemplation and impermanence, right, Bhante?
Yeah.
And the mind can also reach one-pointedness. So what does one-pointedness mean in this context?
Yeah, one-pointedness, normally when I teach, is the settling and the detachment of the mind. Yeah, so let's say we are reacting right now, the mind is not one-pointedness. The mind is always scattered and reacting to the sense contact. So through this right thought, the eightfold part, right thinking, non-greed and non-hatred, then the mind will slowly settle down, come down to a point where it is very stable, very calm. Then that would be the one-pointedness.
Okay. So ekaggata seems to carry with itself the meaning of like seclusion and sort of letting go and calming the senses.
The more holistic kind of one-pointedness.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, so without the vipassana part, then the pure samatha kind of interpretation of one-pointedness can be very painful. So a lot of the more austere practices who want to reach real silence, they want to still the formation, then sometimes they might even try fasting and whatever not to make themselves less energetic and whatever not. Yeah, so the middle way approach would be applying the right thought. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, no problem. Okay, we have something in the chat. Oh, okay, somebody's leaving. Yeah, somebody's leaving. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to give a 3 count, first count, second count, third count. Okay, if there's no questions, I'll see you all back in the practical guided session. So now it's 9:10, 5-minute break, 9:15. See you back here, do some stretching and toilet break. See you later. All right, welcome back. So we'll probably wait for a few more people to return. So in the meantime, do feel free to ask questions or give suggestions or feedback for future content, future topics for discussion. Yeah? If any can help to brainstorm. Because we have left with one more quality. Once we finish wisdom, then end this topic. Any of you have any burning questions, burning topics that you wish to be discussed? Okay, so he's not joining. So who is this ECL?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
I'm from Malacca.
Okay. Is your camera working?
No, I didn't switch on because I'm reading some. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, how about Brutus? Okay, so while waiting for maybe the one or two to settle in, maybe we can find a comfortable position, comfortable seat. Make sure your back is upright. And your body relaxed. Okay, so we are doing the first phase of meditation, which is detachment of the body, impurities of the body, contemplation. So what we are doing is a bit of visualization. We're going to visualize the hairs of the body from head to toe. And we're starting to wish all the hairs well and happy. And when you think of a new area, a new patch of hair, you need to regenerate this new thought. Yeah, may this hair be well and happy. So the whole idea is this effort. It's not just one line. Yeah, may the hairs be well and happy. Then stop there. No, it's about generating right thought and right effort. So the whole idea is never leave the mind stagnant. Once the mind is stagnant or quiet, without thinking, then the mind will cling on to other thoughts, usually stray thoughts, yeah? And you'll end up not meditating and end up daydreaming. So we keep generating thoughts of loving kindness to all the hairs to reduce the extreme of aversion. And if you have done wishing all the hairs from head to toe well and happy, then we introduce the thoughts of non-greed, which are contemplating all the hairs go through birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. So the hairs keep growing and falling off, growing and falling off. So you think of the birth and death cycle many, many times, or the merrier. So this is contemplation on impermanence. And there's no need to over-dramatize, no need to think of how you wash your hair or comb your hair and so on, and just hairs growing and falling over and over again. The more the merrier. And if you do it correctly, then there's an automatic trigger, which have these 7 factors. This sign of joy should arise automatically by itself. It's just like starting a fire. You rub the sticks and if the conditions are right, then fire will appear. So there's no need to fake the joy or force the joy to appear. Just be mindful of impermanence, growing and falling the hair over and over again. And all these emotions that you experience, you treat them as passing sceneries. Let's say you drive a car on the highway, passing sceneries. There's no need to brake and stop and get down to take a look. Just carry on the highway, because once you stop, then there's a traffic jam. So always mindful of impermanence, keep going. There's no need to reject those experiences and no need to cling on to them. You just know how these emotions or these conditions arise. So we are trying to experience the insight kind of concentration without deliberately fixating the mind. Okay, and we can ask ourselves, are these hairs truly self? Can we tell the hairs not to go through birth and death? And the next part of the body, we are going to wish all the nails well and happy. May all the fingernails be well and happy. And may all the toenails be well and happy. And all these nails are subject to birth, aging, decay, and passing away. So we think of the nails growing and falling many, many times, many birth and death cycles. Keep generating thoughts of impermanence and don't cling on any peaceful or pleasant states. And you can be aware of the scenery, but there's no need to stop for it yet. Okay, then we can ask ourselves, are these nails truly self? Can we tell the nails not to go through this birth and death? And the next part of the body, we are going to visualize the teeth And the teeth inside the mouth, may they be well and happy. All the upper rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. And all the lower rows of teeth, may they be well and happy. And all these teeth go through this birth, aging, decay, and passing away. So all the bone cells in the teeth, and they keep growing and falling off due to the grinding of the teeth. And so they keep growing and falling, many, many birth and death cycles. And then we can ask ourselves, are these teeth truly self? Can we tell the teeth not to go through birth and death? Next, we can visualize the skin from head to toe. May they be well and happy. So the skin again is a relatively large area. So every time we think of a new patch of skin, you need to wish it well and happy. And all this skin are subject to birth, aging, decay, and passing away. So you think the skin keep growing and falling off, many, many times, many birth and death cycles of skin. And then we are going to ask ourselves, are this skin truly self? Can we tell the skin not to go through birth and death? So in this short visualization exercise, there's no jhanas involved, purely this loving kindness and impermanence. Yeah? Okay, so the next we are doing is the four sublime states. We are going to radiate loving kindness. So it's a spatial training, no need to visualize. Yeah? Just use a sense of feel. And we're going to wish may all beings in front be well and happy. No need to exert or push, just a gentle wish. And we come back to ourselves and we wish may all beings behind be well and happy. And we come back to ourselves and we wish may all beings on the left be very well and happy. And we come back to ourselves and we wish may all beings on the right be well and happy. And we come back to ourselves. And now we wish may all beings above be well and happy. And we come back to ourselves. And we wish may all beings below well and happy. And we come back to ourselves. And this time around, we are going to feel the entire body from head to toe with loving kindness. So you're now using sensations only. no need to visualize. So whatever sensation that arise when you place your attention in your body, we just wish it well and happy. No need to purposely create the sensation. No need to cling and no need to reject it. Yeah. So as long as a new sensation appearing, just wish it well and happy. Okay, and once you suffuse this entire body with loving kindness, and you just remember this emotion. So this is loving kindness at base level, not in jhanas. Yeah? So it's a restricted form of loving kindness within the confines of the body. And then now we're going to cultivate this boundless loving kindness, and we're going to wish, may all beings in all directions be well and happy, above, below, and all across. So no need to visualize or no need to push or extend your attention, just a gentle wish, and wherever your attention may land, as long as there's a sensation arising, you just wish it well and happy. And so sensation arise, well and happy, sensation arise, well and happy. It's here and now, moment to moment, loving kindness. Never leave the mind idle. So we are not purposely pushing or extending the area of attention. And by doing so, any form of strain is a kind of restriction. So the boundlessness we are doing is removing the boundaries of craving. So the more loving kindness we generate, we reduce the craving of aversion. So the more loving kindness we have, then the mind should get calmer and calmer. and you will get closer to a state of boundlessness. So the mind settles and becomes calm, and that would be the equivalent to this samatha or a jhanic kind of metta. So you should give a different feel or different emotion from the base level loving kindness. Yeah? So as long as you keep generating this loving kindness, this right thought, then you're just putting in the conditions to sustain this state of mind. Okay, and next we are going to cultivate unconditional loving kindness. Right, so basically we're adding some insight and some wisdom into this boundlessness, and basically we're just going to observe impermanence. Yeah, sometimes loving kindness, there's also clinging. So all formations, all the sensations arise and pass away. So how to not truly love and let go, yeah? So it's kind of love without clinging. So you need to accept all arising and passing phenomenon, all sensations arise and pass away. So not just we just observe, but also in our mind we need to keep repeating or reflecting, yeah, arising and passing, arising and passing. So no matter how peaceful you think your mind is, how calm or even equanimous. Yeah. So interestingly, impermanence over time can make this happy, loving kindness emotion like dissipate, and like all meditation objects will eventually lead to equanimity. So keep maintaining this impermanence. Okay, and the next sublime state we are going to cultivate is compassion. So again, we are going through the samatha route, which is we are going to wish all beings may they be free from suffering. So like I mentioned earlier, there's no need to imagine any scenario of anyone, including yourself, what kind of situation you face, but here and now, moment to moment, compassion. So every phenomenon that arises, any sensation arising, we just make a wish, may it be free from suffering. And any new sensation arise, may it be free from suffering. New sensation arise, may it be free from suffering. So the more thoughts of compassion you generate, and the calmer the mind will be, and you get closer to the state of boundlessness, or basically a state of concentration with compassion. So if you do the concentration, kind of compassion correctly, you should feel rather pleasant, yeah? And not so depressing. And now again, we add some insight, some wisdom into this compassion. And we are going to ask ourselves how to be truly free from suffering. And we're still attached to the formation, still clinging. So the way to detach is to let go. Yeah? So to let go, we need to, again, keep observing impermanence. Lots of birth and death of every sensation, lots of arising and passing away. So keep taking note of all the sensations arising and passing to create this detachment. And due to a shortage of time, we're just going to do this loving kindness and compassion only. But if you want to summarize the four immeasurables, it can be also the 7 factors of enlightenment. Like any meditation object we're using can be a visualization kind or sub-vocalization kind, or can be chanting or reciting certain teaching or watching the breath, whatever it is. We need a loving kindness to the object. It's a state of mind, right? And the act of compassion is actually observing impermanence to let go of these formations. And once we successfully let go, then there's a automatic kind of rejoicing. There's a Dharma joy, and eventually the mind can develop this equanimity. So that is another way to summarize the 7 factors if you cannot memorize all 7. Yeah? Okay, so with that in mind, we can always be mindful of this loving kindness and impermanence, and we can physically gently open our eyes but mentally I maintain this mindfulness. Okay, any other problems or issues or questions you want to raise? Okay, if not, then we can conclude. Okay, dedicating of merits. Akasata Yakumata Devanaga Mahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chiran Rakatu Loka Sasanam Etavata Chambihi Sampadam Punya Sampadam Sabhi Deva Sabhi Bhuta Sabhi Sata Anumodantu Sabha Sampati Siddhya. Transference of merits to departed. Idam me nyatina hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idam me nyatina hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. Idam me nyatina hotu, sukita hotu nyatayo. An aspiration, imina punya kamena, mame bala samagamo. Sata samagamo hotu yavani manapatiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, that's the end of the session. Any announcements from Terence?
Oh, no, no,
Okay.
Bhante.
All right, then we'll
Everybody next
continue. Yeah, next week. All right, see you next week and good night.
Okay, Bhante.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Bhante.
Good night.
Bhante, thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.